So yes, Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition, all the DLC comes with the game. We're going to start up a new game. I streamed a bit of this last night, but I'm still definitely rusty. So we'll see how this goes. But this is not going to be just a normal playthrough. I am going to be analyzing the game a bit and also introducing it just in case anyone who's watching has never played before. I do know at least one person who's likely to watch has not really gotten into Dark Souls before, so this is in part for him to show him how to get good at the game, basically, and what's so interesting about it to a lesser extent. So we'll be analyzing the story and the mechanics and a bunch of other random things as we go through. So, first off to start, for any new players, class selection. Now, the classes in this game don't actually decide exactly how you'll play. Instead, this game is based entirely around builds and what build you decide to make. So the classes are really just getting you started in the direction of a particular build, but it's perfectly valid to choose a class and then go for a completely different build. So if it is your first time, classes I would recommend going with, Warrior is a nice balanced one. Knight is a little bit less balanced, but he's got good equipment to start with, a bit more defensive than the Warrior. Wanderer is also decent, but might be a little bit harder for newcomers to start with. I'll be going over the stats in detail a bit later. The Thief is what I normally start with when I play casually, because the weapon he's got right now is a weapon that takes a while to get in the game, and it's a weapon I really like, and because the Thief comes with the Master Key. So basically below, after you choose class, you can choose a gift, and the Master Key is one of the gifts you can choose, but if I choose the Thief and I want the Master Key, I don't have to get a different gift. I'm going to be deliberately avoiding using the Master Key in this, so I'm not going to go Thief. Bandit also viable, but a little less easy to play, I think, because of what his starting weapon is. Got a pretty good shield, though. Actually, might be better than the Knight shield, I'm not sure. Okay, so magic. Magic in this game can make some parts of the game much easier or even trivial. You would think that it might be a good thing to take if you're a beginner. I would advise against that. Not only is working in a magic build a bit more complicated, but if you take the sorcerer right off the bat, you will probably breeze through a lot of the early areas, relatively speaking, and get through a lot of it by just keeping your distance and pelting enemies with magic. And you will not learn the skills that the enemies in those early areas are meant to teach you, which will make the rest of the game harder, because you cannot just breeze through the whole game with magic, even though if you kind of know what you're doing, it does make things easier. The Pyromancer and the Cleric, however, also starting magic people, these guys, it is perfectly fine to take. Because you can't just breeze through all of the initial enemies so easily with these. Additionally, they have decent weapons and shields, unlike... Well, okay, the Pyromancer doesn't have a good shield, but he's got a decent weapon, unlike the Sorcerer, who is basically... He's basically as weak, if not weaker, than the Thief when it comes to how easy it is to play him initially. the Pyromancer and the Cleric can hold their own in melee, and the Pyromancer comes with a spell that's good for fighting PvE, not so much PvP, but PvP doesn't show up till later. And he's got a decent, somewhat heavy weapon. The Cleric has a nice blunt weapon, and good blunt weapons aren't that common. And blunt weapons have some nice little things they do that can help you out. And he also comes with a healing spell on him right off the bat, so you get extra heals. Also, Faith build is actually decent for a new player to do a Faith build, at least to some extent, because there's certain spells that you can get, or certain miracles you can get that are especially helpful if you're new. The Deprived is basically for challenge runs, or for if you want to make the start of the game a little more difficult. Do not pick him if it's your first time. That lack of armor will really hurt you. So with all that in mind, I'm actually leaning towards, let me see what the Cleric's stats are, because it's been a while. He's got points in resistance, which isn't great. Resistance is basically a stat that you almost always want to dump. Actually, they all do, so yeah, there's no great loss here. So yeah, I'll start up as a Cleric just because I'm going to want to show off a certain miracle, and having the faith to do it right off the bat will be nice. So the class and the gift are the only things you're choosing here that actually affect your stats. So the Goddess's Blessing is an item that you can use only once, and if you're new to the game, having basically a full restore isn't actually that useful because you use it once and it's done. Black Fire Bombs can actually be quite useful if you save them for powerful enemies. I believe you get 10 of them when you choose this. They're basically a powerful damaging item that you won't normally get till significantly later in the game. Twin Humanities is what I'm going to pick, but it won't be that useful if you're new. The binoculars I would never bother with because you can actually get these fairly near the start of the game if you're willing to die for it. The pendant does nothing. There may or may not be a story around it. As we'll get into, Dark Souls is very subtle about storytelling. Mentioned the Master Key before. This opens a few specific doors, and most of the doors it opens are basically alternate progression paths that will skip you into more dangerous areas where you can get cool items. So I usually play with this, but since I'm deliberately going to avoid those paths and to talk about how the levels are designed, leaving that out. The HP bonus you get from the Tiny Beans ring is not that great. The Old Witch's Ring lets you talk to one or two specific NPCs, and that's it. It won't come into play that much, so I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm going to go for the Twin Humanities, and you'll see why at the end of the tutorial. I'll just go for an average build. I can customize the appearance of my character to be really weird, but I'm not going to actually bother doing that. And why don't we have a ponytail?
In the age of ancients,
and that's quite loud again.
The world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons.
Most of this intro is just going to be world backstory.
But then there was fire. And with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts peeled apart their stone skins. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more.
Those are two different characters.
Thus began the Age of Fire.
And now we get into the stuff that's actually going to be relevant right now.
The flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless lights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark side.
The full relevance of that cutscene not going to be revealed until Dark Souls 3. So, if you're going to play Dark Souls, the one thing I recommend you have is good memory, because half of what got revealed in that cutscene won't even really be relevant until halfway through the game. Granted, you don't have to understand the story to enjoy the game, but it does help. So I'm gathering that my voice volume settings do not actually apply in the opening cutscene, and that I set them too well.
This is your fate.
Love that beautiful face that I made on my character. Yeah, we're not going to see that for a little while. That's part of why I don't bother customizing my character in this one. So, to recap, the important stuff for right now. The world is in decline because the fire is fading. Bearers of the accursed dark sign, also known as the Undead, are appearing among the people, and we'll see what undead means shortly. We are undead. We have been corralled along with other undead and basically stashed away in the undead asylum to basically go insane. Because that's what the undead eventually do. So this guy, this knight, dropped this body of either a jailer or a fellow escapee, hard to say, down here that happened to have a key on it. Probably intentionally. So let's de-equip my twin humanities just in case I pull a dumb and accidentally use them. Alright, I don't have a helmet to start with. Actually, no, I don't need to look at my equip load or anything right now. So right now, we are equipped with a broken sword. Joy. So that, by the way, our picking up and using items tutorial, or our picking up items and opening doors with them tutorial, right off the bat. And then these messages, which the hallway isn't narrow enough that you can't avoid them, but it's very difficult to go down the hallway without having the read message prompt pop up. These are the basic control tutorials. Some people skip past these because the first few are very basic. If you are new to the game, I do not recommend skipping past them. So the right bumper is your light attack. You can see it's a bit of a combo. It's a 1-2 thing that repeats itself. Then the right trigger is the strong attack. When you're new to the game, I would recommend mostly doing light attacks. The strong attack often doesn't actually have as much damage per second and is less stamina efficient. You can see my stamina in the upper left part of the screen. And you'll notice that when it goes down, there's a yellow section to indicate how much it's going down by just before it actually goes down. And that yellow seems to be two things at once. It both is an indicator of essentially your stamina's gone down already, but we're not regenning your stamina just yet. It starts to regen as soon as the yellow hits the green. And additionally, it's good if you're a new player getting used to how much stamina your weapons take away, because you can actually get a visual indicator of exactly how much it was instead of it just dropping. So, yes, holding the right face button causes us to run, and I don't think the tutorial says this, but quickly releasing and tapping again will cause us to do a jump and roll. That button is also our dodge button if we just tap it. I'll get to dodging more later. I dodge a lot in this game. So hitting the right stick, we get target lock. It is possible to play through this entire game always locking onto target, and if you're new, I suggest that you almost always lock on to targets. It generally makes making sure you hit them a lot easier. Because there's something to note. When you start your attack animation, and you'll notice it's a lot slower than normal games, which I'll again get to in a minute, there's actually a short period of time in which you can aim the attack somewhere other than the direction you were facing when you did it, or when you hit the button. So locking on will help a lot, and most NPC enemies will not be able to dodge out of the way of your attacks if you're locked on and within range. Gonna lower the volume a tiny bit more. Okay. So these developer messages are also the same form as the messages that other players will leave you. And this is also training you to actually check these messages. I should be online right now. So, for some reason, lighting this bonfire does not cause me to respawn at, but resting does. However, normally that's not the case. So basically, when you rest at a bonfire, you will recover all your health, among other things, and that bonfire gets set to your spawn point if you die. So just to demonstrate that mechanic, because I'm not likely to die naturally for a while. Get away. Nah, I don't think I will. So, this is the area boss, by the way. Yeah, nice tutorial. Also, the door behind me is closed. And locked. In fact, I'm pretty sure... Nope, can't even interact with it. Hi, friend. Actually, let me go check this door. This guy is intimidating when you first run into him, but once you get used to the game, he's pretty much a joke. He's really easy to avoid. So I'm just going to let him kill me, just to demonstrate respawning. Alright, there were some level design bits I wanted to point out, but we can get to that in a minute. I'm not going to go into all the little details of the cool little tricks they do with the level design here, because that's not really what I'm focusing on for this. You'll notice, by the way, that number at the bottom right now says 0. Before that number had, I think, 40 in it. And you see that bloodstain over there with the green glow around it? That is where I dropped my souls that I collected from enemies after I died. When you die, you will get one opportunity to go and retrieve your souls, which will be sitting near where you died, by running over that bloodstain and hitting A. Since it's only 40 souls, I'm not even going to bother. So, by the way, you can't attack through walls. Enemies kind of can. They won't usually try to, but their attacks do phase through the walls, because if they bounced off, the enemies in tight corridors would just be unable to do anything to you. So just keep that in mind. By the way, while we do have our heal miracle already, we can't actually cast it. Because in order to cast spells in this game, we need a spell catalyst of the appropriate type. We will get that shortly. So if somebody has been skipping past the tutorials up to this point, which does happen with a few people, this is where they might screw themselves over. By the way, you'll notice that these arrows are actually curving a little bit to track me. So I got the east-west shield. And yes, these are the tutorials that tell you how to actually open your menu to equip the shield. So we need to go not to browse and use items, but to change equipment. By the way, the game is not paused when you're in this menu, but you can't attack or roll instantly, so be very aware of whether or not you have this menu open and that you're in a safe place when you do. So the straight sword hilt is pretty much useless. Oh, but we don't have our weapon yet, so equip the east-west shield. You'll see that I don't actually have it on my hand right now. That's because I have 2 shield slots that I cycle through with the left, not face button. The left, not analog stick. It's the left directional button. And likewise with the right directional button, I can cycle through 2 right-hand slots. They're really left and right-hand slots, but the left hand is pretty much always where you want your shield, and the right hand is pretty much always where you want melee weapons. I can also cycle through usable items and spells, which I've only got 1 of right now. So left bumper to hold up shield, blocks attacks, obviously. We will get deeper into the mechanics of how the shield works later, but I don't want to overload you right now with every single little detail of the mechanics, because this is meant to be beginner friendly and focus on more than just the mechanics. I don't actually need to block here, I could just dodge, but that works. The mace is pretty good for a starting weapon. So those white fog gates, those serve two different purposes. You can actually see another one coming up right there through that window. And I believe you might have actually been able to see the Asylum demon through that window before he jumped down. From below, of course. Also, you can't run through here, which I always found really annoying. So here it teaches you dodging mechanics. So yes, just tapping B without moving the control stick will do a backstep. This backstep is not that useful for dodging until you're used to the game. Until you're used to the game. But it does still have uses, and it's worth getting used to doing it. The roll, if you're holding the control stick in a direction and tap, you will do a roll. If you chose the warrior, the knight, or a few of the other classes, your roll will not be as agile as this one. We will get to that. So now I can run up here. Totally safe, obviously. Nope. Ow. So that boulder just smashed a hole in this wall. I think the whole point of that boulder was to make you hesitant to go up these steps so that you would first go into this room it smashed open and down here without actually blocking you off from going there. The game tends to send the message that you shouldn't be in area typically by punishing you for being there rather than just blocking you off. So now that that boulder smashed a hole in this wall, by the way, this ball is not actually the one that rolled in here. I'm fairly certain it's a static one that replaced the one that rolled in here after it bounced off the wall.
Oh, you. You're no hollow. Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you?
Okay, so what we've learned so far, so we both of us are undead, but he said I'm not hollow, and he expected what he expected more likely to find was that I would be a hollow, which implies that most of the people around here are hollows. They're also undead. So hollowing is basically what's referred to when undead essentially lose their minds. And there's lots of implications of that, but I'm trying to point out what you can actually surmise about the story just from what's presenting you here. Because I think there's a lot of interesting details of how to do storytelling in games subtly that have been worked into Dark Souls in various ways.
I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family. Thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringest the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. Well, now you know, and I can die with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask, an undead favorite. Oh, and this. Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death. So go now, and thank you.
So it is not possible to skip the Estus Flask because you need that key from him. You can skip talking to him by killing him.
Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, an important note, this guy is an exception, but most NPCs have multiple um, lines of dialogue that they'll give you each time you interact with them until they start repeating themselves. As a general rule, you will want to keep talking to NPCs until they start repeating themselves. It will often get you items or useful advice or just story details sometimes. So, item use tutorial, it's actually quite possible to not actually see this one with how it's positioned. And then this, I think, just popped up. It tells us, hey, if we rest at bonfire, we'll replenish that. So I hit X, I heal. So that sound was him dying. And I just got his souls. So what I just opened was the first of many looping back shortcuts back to this first bonfire. You can see I have an attune magic option. There's no point in using that or explaining that right this second. Where was I? I was about to say something, but I lost the trail of it. I may or may not have said, but you can kill him to skip that dialogue and get the items off his corpse. So, the boulder's gone now, but the guy who threw it at us is still up here. And this is the first enemy besides that archer who's actually going to aggro on us without being provoked. So this is a basic hollow. These guys are essentially just berserkers with basically no protection. So you usually either want to play highly defensively against them, let their attacks bounce off your shield, then hit back, or just hit them before they can do anything to you. So the top face button to wield your weapon in your right hand, which should be where you put your melee weapons, two-handed. So two-handing does two things, well, three things really, to your four, I guess, to your weapon. So the first, so this is what it looks like when I attack light one-handed. That is a heavy two-handed attack. Or heavy one-handed attack. When I two-hand this, actually with this weapon it doesn't change the moveset, I think. Okay, yes, so the moveset is the same two-handing and one-handing on this. But with most weapons, when you two-hand them, it will actually, I'll get to that in a sec, it will actually change the moveset. Additionally, it provides a damage bonus to the weapon while increasing the amount of stamina that each attack will drain from you. So that was actually here. So heavy attack two-handing, heavy attack one-handing. Now in this case, it really doesn't actually matter for me because I can still get off two heavy attacks either way and drain all my stamina in the process. So, changes the moveset usually, increases the stamina drain, increases the damage. It also increases your effective strength by half of its value. So, your strength is effectively 1.5 times its normal number. And this is very useful on some weapons and not at all useful on others, depending on whether or not they increase in damage or require a certain level of strength. So this weapon. So this is a little bit misleading, the tutorial on the kick and jump attack. These are not moves you want to use often, but they are situationally useful. The jump attack is a powerful attack that closes distance as you do it. The kick, however, is useful for two things. One is that it can push enemies around a lot more than a standard attack will. And oops, I'm not kicking, there we go. And the other is that if your enemy is blocking, a kick will actually do massive damage to their stamina. we'll get into stamina mechanics in a bit more depth later. Now, what's misleading about this is you don't hold the left stick and press the button. See, this is me holding the left stick and pressing the left bumper. What you do is you tap the left stick and release it while you tap the button. And it's a bit finicky, sometimes you'll get it wrong, but it's not that hard once you realize that you need to tap. So yes, resting at bonfires will restore my health, restore my Estus Flask. It will also restore my uses of spells, because in this Souls game, each spell has a specific finite number of uses. And it will revive any enemies who were on the map before, with a few exceptions. So I just got my first spellcasting catalyst. I think I'll put this in my shield hand. So to use a catalyst, you just use the bumper on whichever side of the controller is equivalent to the hand it's equipped to. So to heal with this miracle, hit the bumper. You'll notice that the length of this animation is significantly longer than the Estus Flask animation, and it can be interrupted. If I press the trigger on that hand, it will just do a basic punch, which is pretty much useless. Yes, if you're new at the game, blocking with your shield is going to be your main form of defense. I very much feel that if you are new to this, to Souls games, that Dark Souls 1 is very much the easiest. Yes, this tells you how to actually use miracles. Is the easiest of the games to get into, including Bloodborne. There are a lot of things about it that are much more forgiving for new players. It's missing a couple of the quality of life improvements that later games will get. But for the most part, it's slower paced. The enemies are generally both easier and more exploitable. There's no super sharp, what's it called? Essentially difficulty spikes. So there's a few more things besides that make it much easier. So this is telling us about backstabbing and parrying. So when you've got a shield equipped in your left hand, you press the left trigger and it will do a parry animation. And then backstabbing. I will get into the details on how to parry and backstab more later on. It's likely if you're new to the game, you will not be able to pull off those moves on this enemy, who's a new enemy, who will actually be a lot tougher for you. But, as you can see, if you do manage to get a parry, or for that matter, backstab, it just goes down. So this door is locked, and we will not be able to find the key for that right now. Alright, so RB while falling, plunging attack. Hello, friend. So if I stay on this platform for too long, he will jump up and attack me. So I'm going to hit him first. So, lock on. I don't really have to lock on. In fact, unlocking can be useful against bosses, since it gives you freer movement. But I'm going to. So the main strategy with this guy is get up close to him, ideally behind him, and wail away while rolling to the side. Your shield will not do much against many of these attacks, both because he's using a very heavy weapon and because of the direction some of these attacks come in from. I recommend two-handing for fighting him, although the shield can be useful for negating a bit of damage, but you don't want to rely on it. So, when that boss died, you'll notice... Wait. There. I just got 2,000 souls. I also got a key to get out of this place, and I got humanity, which, again, I will explain later. Actually, I'll be explaining that one fairly shortly. Wow, the Asylum lasted a lot longer than planned. So I'm going to ignore the advice to go straight ahead. So there's a little item saying over here, Soul of a Lost Undead. And this is a player message. You can tell because of the symbol next to it. If it's a dev message, it will have this specific knight symbol. But player messages will have a range of symbols on them based upon how many people have rated them. So, this is Snuggly the Crow, who for some reason is not speaking to me right now. I will not have access to this until later after I leave, so I'm going to do this right now. So usually when you walk up to this, it will play a little voice clip to hint you in, but for some reason when I walk up right now, it doesn't. So I'm going to... Alright, I need to unequip my humanity because new items will auto-equip if you have open slots. I'm going to drop a humanity here, and then I'm going to save or I'm just going to quit the game because the game auto-saves. In later games, this trading mechanic with the crow is still in place, but they don't require you to log out and quit. This is the new file I started just to get used to the game again. There, now it's talking.
You give me warm, give me soft.
So this crow wants you to drop things that are warm and things that are soft for it. I presume that humanity is warm, but maybe it's soft. Who knows? So I got a ring of sacrifice from that. I'm not going to go through every item description here, but I will go through some of them. You'll notice the toggle display button, the left face button. That's essentially your button for getting more information on items. If I actually go to an armor piece here, it will... So I've got the short armor stat thing, then I've got the expanded thing, and then I've got item description. And item descriptions don't just give you backstory and background on the items. Sometimes they actually give you useful mechanical information, so it's worth reading them. So essentially, when I die with this ring, I won't drop my souls or anything else that I have that would normally be lost on death, but the ring breaks. So essentially, this is something that I'll be equipping if I have a lot of nice stuff and I don't want to lose it, and I'm worried I might lose it before I get to use it for whatever I want it for. You do not lose items when you die, luckily, which is actually what the Soul of a Lost Undead is for. It's an item that you use to acquire souls, but you can wait to use it until you're actually about to consume them for their purposes. So, right, I want to drop the twin humanities. You can only trade the crow one of each type of item that will take per game. New Game Plus is a thing, and pretty much all of this kind of stuff will reset when you go into New Game Plus. Fun fact, if you beat the Asylum demon that we just killed the first time it shows up without going through to pick up your equipment, it will drop a weapon that requires very high strength to use but is fairly powerful. So that's basically put in there. either for players who are feeling bold or for players who are playing in New Game Plus. New Game Plus essentially allows you to retain the vast majority of the items you have in addition to your level.
To leave the Undead Asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lordra.
Inspired naming. So yes, a crow has randomly just picked us up after we escaped the Undead Asylum and decided to drop us off in exactly the place where that prophecy says we should be. And we are still Baconface. Alright, so welcome to Firewing Shrine, the hub of pretty much the entire game. They have already automatically changed where our spawn point is, so even if we don't use that bonfire, we will respawn right where we landed if we die. Oh, this bloodstain, by the way, this is a player dying. We get to see their last moments, but we don't get to see anything they might have been fighting. That was an interesting one. So actually, you know what? I'm going to stop the stream for right now because there's a few specific things I want to go over in Firewing Shrine because it's actually a very interesting area right off the bat. There's lots of storytelling in the environment. So I'm actually going to save this for next stream where things will get a little bit more interesting than me just going over the basics. As you'll notice, however, we now have quite a few more items in our menu when we rest at the bonfire. Bonfires are kind of your hub for a fair number of things. But for now, I'm going to end it off there. So thanks for watching. And how do I emote again? No, that's not an emote. There we go. So long.